After the NBA's opening night, I made a video discussing 4 lessons that we learned from the opening slate of games, but there were only 4 teams playing that night, so now that all 30 teams have gotten their seasons underway, I'm back to make another video under the same guise, except we'll be discussing 5 more lessons learned from the other 26 teams' opening night performances. Preseason can only tell you so much, with guys playing limited minutes, so seeing them for the first time in real game action can tell you a lot, and these 5 things in particular stuck out to me the most. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first thing we learned from the opening week of the NBA season is that Russell Westbrook is the reason why the Clippers don't need James Harden. So much of the focus this offseason has been on the fact that James Harden's time in Philadelphia has soured, wanting to be traded to the Clippers, but zero progress has been made on that front, mostly because the Clippers haven't exactly reciprocated that interest. They've engaged in trade discussions briefly, of course, but never really put their best foot forward in them because they're in no rush to trade away anything to bring him in. For pretty much the entirety of the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George era of the Clippers basketball, they've been looking for a solution at the point guard position who can facilitate, make plays for those around them, and run the offense at a high level. So obviously James Harden is someone who could do that for them in theory, but the team brought in Russell Westbrook to do exactly that last year and chose to re-sign him this offseason. When the Clippers looked down and out in the playoffs last year after Kawhi Leonard suffered an injury, Westbrook stepped up and kept them in it until the very end, with some amazing performances in that series, and in their opening game this week, Westbrook looked very spry, throwing down a few big dunks and dishing out 13 assists in their win. Westbrook and Harden at this point in their career would clash hard in the same lineup, and the Clippers likely know this. Neither are very effective off the ball, and both have defensive lapses that can hurt the team, but they're both excellent playmakers with the ball in their hands, so they don't need 2 players with that kind of play style, with so many mouths to feed already on their roster. The next lesson learned from the opening week of the season is that the new-look super teams in the Eastern Conference are not as unbeatable as initially advertised. Now, both the Boston Celtics and Milwaukee Bucks came away with wins in their opening games, but both looked kind of shaky at times, being pushed to the absolute limits by teams that were either shorthanded or expected to be in a tier below them. With all of the big moves made by the Bucks and Celtics collectively, the general consensus coming into the season was that they would be a level above the rest of the competition in the conference, with Giannis Antetokounmpo teaming up with Damian Lillard, along with Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis being added to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They both upgraded their lineups exponentially on paper. The issue, though, is that basketball needs to be played on the court, not on paper. The Celtics faced off against the Knicks in their first game, who really didn't even have their best performance, and yet it was still a one-possession game for most of the fourth quarter. Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson, the team's 2 best players, shot a combined 11 of 43 from the field, and they still almost beat the Celtics, because they have more guys that can impact the game off the bench and throughout their lineup, while the Celtics are a very top-heavy team with a thin rotation top to bottom. The Bucks are in a similar boat, where Damian Lillard is still one of the best scorers in the league, having dropped 39 points in his debut with the Bucks, but the Bucks only beat the 76ers without James Harden playing by a single point. The Bucks sacrificed their perimeter defense to create this duo because they were unable to chase the Sixers off the 3-point line in this game, and that killed them for most of the night. So while the star talent is always expected to win out, both the Bucks and the Celtics have holes just like any other team. The next lesson learned from the NBA's opening week is that Victor Wembanyama is definitely going to experience some growing pains. Wembanyama enters the year expected to be playing limited minutes, for the time being anyway, but he didn't really have much of a choice in their first game against the Dallas Mavericks. Wembanyama is such an intriguing prospect, obviously, because of his ridiculous combination of height, length, and skill, but the physicality of the game definitely gave him a wake-up call in his first game. He only played 23 minutes, but in that time he managed to commit 5 fouls, nearly fouling out of the game. Things that he used to be able to get away with prior to coming to the NBA will now be punished, and he's going to have to learn that the hard way. His jumper looked solid on the night, but there were times when he got a bit out of control. It was evident that he's definitely going to need to put on some strength over time, and while he still has otherworldly potential, I don't think it's fair or reasonable to expect him to dominate game in and game out. The Spurs are an exciting young team, with guys like Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson leading the way too, so he and all of the other fans are just going to have to be patient. The next lesson learned from the opening week is that James Wiseman might be a bust. I know this seems like a crazy overreaction after just one game, but my reasoning for it extends far beyond that. Wiseman's career has not gone down anywhere close to how it was expected to after being drafted 2nd overall back in 2020. He was drafted that early because he had tantalizing physical tools and athleticism for a 7-footer, and his upside was expected to be through the roof. The issue, once he reached the NBA though, was that he struggles with the mental side of the game, where he would often get caught out of position defensively, he wouldn't always take the best shots on offense, and his advanced metrics more often than not pointed to the fact that the team was better without him on the court. The original argument for his career not taking off was that the Warriors were not a good fit for him, and he needed to be on a rebuilding team where he could have more margin for error, but he's now in his 2nd season on the Pistons and isn't even a part of their rotation anymore. During training camp, it got reported that the backup center minutes were being fought for between Wiseman and Marvin Bagley, and the winner of that internal competition would be in the rotation and the loser would not. Well, on opening night, Bagley was the backup center and James Wiseman did not play a single minute. So at this point, I don't know where else you can go if you're Wiseman. And finally, the last lesson from the opening week we'll be discussing today is that the Chicago Bulls might blow it up sooner than anticipated. Let's just say that opening night for Chicago did not go anywhere near as planned. They started the year with a 20-point loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder, where nobody really played all that well for them, and after the game, the players held a players-only meeting to work some things out. I don't know about you, but to me, holding a players-only meeting just one game into a season doesn't exactly sound very promising for what they're trying to build over there. The offseason, they brought back mostly the same group that underperformed last season, with the addition of Torrey Craig and Javon Carter. It's just a group with a very low ceiling, and most are aware that they likely need to undergo another rebuild, which could come sooner than initially thought. DeMar DeRozan is on the last year of his contract, so he could definitely be on the trade block before the deadline, and if he goes, then it's hard to see Zach LaVine wanting to stick around, which could make him available as well. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what stood out most to you during these games. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.